It was supposed to be under wraps. It was supposed to be a big mystery. It was, I think, intended to inspire a certain amount of creative tension in our performances and stuff like that. In point of fact, if the final page of the shooting script showed Axel getting his arm ripped off, or showed, I should say, the killer miner having his arm ripped off in a rock slide. And a week before we went to Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, they sent me to get a prosthetic arm made. So, do the math. You know, to be blunt, I kind of always knew it was my character. Well, first off, I should say that I'd been dining out on Peter Cowper's incredible performance as the killer miner for years. People assumed that somehow I had done it, which was not the case. It was Peter's creation. He created the character, gave it a sense of physical menace and grace. A character. He did a tremendous job. People who don't know assume that I played it, but such was not the case. Do I regret? No. I mean, there was plenty of work to go around there for everybody, believe me. I think it was one of the best calls that the producers and the directors made, was hiring an actor, especially one with the attributes that Peter had, to perform the part of the killer. It paid off big time. I can't recall anything specific, you know. To a certain extent, the days were a bit of a blur because of the logistics of the filming. Um, and, you know, you're shooting out of sequence too, so I'm sure there was some stuff, but there was nothing really specific or that jumped out at me as saying, where did it go when I saw the finished film? Well, the filming locations were pretty remarkable. We shot in this small town in Cape Breton, Sydney Mines, Nova Scotia, in and around it, which gave a real sense of grit and particularity to the locations that we were working in, gave a sense of place. Cape Breton is, as anybody who's visited there knows, is a very, very particular corner of maritime Canada with its own history and its own culture, it's safe to say, and that was reflected in every frame they shot in Sydney Mines, Nova Scotia. And that's leaving aside the fact that we shot in the Princess Mine, which was a mine museum in Sydney Mines, and it was, you know, logistically, it was a daily struggle to get cast and crew down to the pithead area. So I think the locations were, if you pardon a bit of a corny expression, I think the locations were the star of the film in some ways, because it gave a sense of reality and rootedness to what would otherwise be a fairly conventional horror movie narrative. It grounded it in a reality and a culture and a sense of place that was quite authentic. The challenges, well, the challenge is just getting to start your day's work, getting down to the bottom of the pithead area and then back up, and cast and crew, and as miners will tell you, mines are dangerous places. There were a few incidents that happened. One time that we were working in the pithead area, me and I think 2 or 3 other cast members, and they sent us down on the track, and then they pulled us up to the top of the pithead area, and we jump out and we do the scene. They sent us too far back one time, I think for take 3 or 4, and we went through a door that it turned out it was a door. We didn't know if it was a door. It looked like we were going to crash into a wall. In any event, it was a little bit spooky, and they pulled us back up. We jumped out, did the scene. Director called cut, and then a few words were exchanged with the person operating the pulley, and also the producers. But that's a story for another time. I like working with George. He's got a real energy. Both he blows hot and cold a lot, but he was under enormous pressure day to day to keep things moving. Um, I liked working with him. I thought he certainly knew the script inside out. If you had any questions about stuff or just the story or the narrative. He was all over that, and certainly enjoyed working with the other cast members as well. I think our average age was about 25 or something. We were babies, and I was really doing my first. I just had my ass fired off another film in Toronto 2 weeks before I got cast in Bloody Valentine, so I was just sort of like, it was a bit of a lifeline for me at that point personally. A shout out to Rodney Gibbons, who was our DOP. Rodney was a real rock of Gibraltar on the shoot, and just a fine person too. I particularly remember working with him. He was sort of, while the rest of us were losing our heads occasionally, he was always calm and focused and kept things on the up and up. So. Government threw money at us. They should start doing it again. I was part of it, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a. I've never been. I spent lifetime in various parts and corners and nooks and niches of the entertainment industry, and I've never understood the business side of it. So other than the fact that the government saw fit to make a lot of tax money available, I think there was a certain confluence of sort of young filmmakers who were coming up, and there's always a fresh crop of actors who are fighting and scrapping for roles and stuff. That was certainly the case back then. I was happy about it. I mean, I was like early to mid-20s and just got out of theater school, and suddenly there was the beginnings of some sort of nascent film industry in Canada. I'm astonished. I can't speak for everybody else in the cast and George, but George Mahalka, the director, but I mean, I lived in LA for 15 years, from 85, a couple of years after the film was made, to 2000, and I went to film school and I worked in animated film. I spent 10 seasons with The Simpsons, and all that time in LA, what My Bloody Valentine was a hard heavy metal band in LA. I don't know, maybe they're still around. They copped the name and they ran with it. I never heard anything about the film. I showed it to a couple of other colleagues when I was in film school. They were interested in it, but the idea that it had accrued a cult following, if somebody had told me that back when we made it, I would have given them the card to the Funny Farm. It was just, we were astonished. I remember, this is going back about 7-8 years, when we got together at the old Bloor Cinema there for an evening that horror movie, Remorgue, I think they're called, in Toronto had put together. And George Mahalka, the director, was there, Laurie Hallier, a bunch of the other surviving cast members, and we found out that there were people who'd traveled to that event from like Pennsylvania, and I was astonished. I really was. It was a film that we did when we were, everybody was young, and then everybody moved off, went into, some people stayed in acting, some people I went off to do different things here, there, and everywhere. And then we sort of came together. I was astonished. I'm still astonished. I don't quite get it, other than I suppose we must have got something right, you know, and I say that as a person. I'm not a particular aficionado of the horror movie genre. It's not what interests me personally as a viewer. I like historical dramas, I like documentary, and I still work in animation. And the horror movie genre is not one that I'm particularly drawn to. So the fact that I played a role in a film with a cult following, I still find it kind of remarkable. My daughter is 23 right now. When she was growing up, she was born in LA, growing up in LA and then in Toronto here, I used to tell her, we kid each other a lot, I used to tell her, oh yeah, you know, because I was working in animation then, you know, when your dad was younger, he was a movie star. And she would still she would look at me and say, yeah, movie star. Your face is all wrinkled, you dress like a hobo, you're a movie star. She didn't quite get it. And then her two cousins, Gabrielle and Luca, in Montreal, we went to a family reunion and they showed the film. The first time she saw it, she was about 14, 15. So I'm not quite sure how we got onto this subject, but I still remember her looking at me going, you did do you did do something. So anyway, I saw it once or twice. Yeah, I'm sticking with the party line. I think the one area that we got it right that they didn't quite was the mine stuff, down in the mine stuff. So we had the very good opportunity to work in an actual mine that used to function. So, but apart from that, it was fun to see. The fact that somebody actually did a remake still astonishes me too. So. He was always a glass half full kind of guy. There were a lot of days that got pretty tense on that shoot. We were, you know, it's just the nature of the beast. If you've been on a shoot yourself, you know. You're always racing against the clock. There's egos, there's technical stuff. It can be very tense, and everybody can get stretched pretty thin sometimes. But Alf was one of these guys, it didn't matter what was going on or how crazy or tense it got. He always had this big kind of goofy smile on his face, and he had an ability just to share that positivity. Yeah, it was a fun guy to work with. It wasn't just that he was wacky and zany. He also brought an edge to everything he did. There was like a lot of character actors who have a flair for comedy. There was always something going on underneath that he brought to his work. So yeah, so it's a real pity we lost him. I hope people enjoy watching the film again. I'm always amazed. I'm very grateful. That's something I've neglected to mention earlier. And, I'm very grateful for the fact that people do get a lot of enjoyment from watching the film, and still to this day, that means a lot. You know, when you do a job of work as an actor, you're hoping you reach people, and you know, if you're an entertainer, you want people to be entertained. These days, mostly I'm playing music with a music project, so I try not to lose sight of whatever else is happening. You're up there to give people a good time, and I hope, and I think we did, with making this film, give people a good time. So. Hold your horses, here we go.